good morning to those who had a heavy night last night. So I'm going to start with a short video on shift, and the rest of the presentation is going to be about shift in mindset, social behavior, and about business agility, technology, and infrastructure, and how it's going to influence a shift in testing. kind of, cropped off the piece where it says how many babies are born in China and India. We didn't want you to fall off your seats. We have more sessions today. So, talking about, shift, that was an excellent video, which just says, the rapid pace that we have been, moving, at least in the last few years. So now if you look at it, social behavior is changing. Mindsets, of people are changing. The way, business expectations out of us is really maturing, and it's becoming more agile. Talking about mindsets, right? So if you look at it, 1982 plus born, they refer to as Generation Y or the millennials, right? It's just referring to an incident that happened in my living room. My 7-year-old daughter, I think she'll be Generation Z. So she was watching TV, and it's Choda Bheem. For those of you who don't know what Choda Bheem is, basically the young kid who eats laddus and becomes stronger. I don't know how, but he does. And then and then for those who are here from out of India, it's kind of an equivalent of Asterix and Obelix, an Indian version basically. So I go and I sit next to her. And I say, we've been asking you to do your homework, you're not been doing it, or no, what's happening? So she kind of gives me a look, says, go away, don't disturb me, kinds. So then I ask her, do you want 2 or 4? So she thinks it's ice cream or something, so she says, what? I said, well, cows and buffaloes. You don't seem to be studying much, you don't know much, so when you grow up, what else are you going to do? So she gives me a, I hate you look, and get away. So, and I just curiously ask her, what do you want to be when you grow up and be big? So she's silent for a few seconds, and then she asks me, what do you do? So I said, I'm into IT, I'm into testing. And she says, well, Daddy, I don't know what I want to do, but I definitely don't want to do what you do. So, she says that, you're not there when I go to sleep, and by the time I get up, you leave. Or, I leave, and after that you get up. So, kids today, they know their priorities. They want a work-life balance. That's kind of a pattern. They know very well, and so what we wanted versus what they want is really very different. So if you look at it, the next slide, for some of you in the back, sorry, I don't think you can read it, but, I'll explain it to you. So basically the 1982s to, 2000 born, people are referred to as millennials, as Generation Y. Okay, they are the folks who are entering into employment today, and their behaviors are quite different, okay? So if you look at it, their 6th priority in life is to have a good career and a good high-paying career. That's not their number 1 priority. And if you look at it, it's also a side effect that, probably we have been so caught up with our day-to-day life, so busy, that, we have not been very great parents. Not that we beat them up or anything, but, the way we used to get attention from our parents, that's not how, they are getting. So their number 1 priority is to be a good parent, to have a very good, work-life balance. Okay, so that's something that they're very, very keen. So if you're going to go tomorrow and say, you work hard, you do it, and then you're going to really grow up in your career, they say, they might just shift jobs. You would have seen the number of job shifts at 108 by 38 years. But if you look at it, what is our USP? India, a lot of outsourcing happens. Is it because we're smart? Yeah, we're smart, but that's not our USP, right? So it's flexibility, ownership, and accountability. If you look at some of the South American nations, when you go there, 6 o'clock, whether you're in a production support role or not, it's a critical issue that's happening. 6 o'clock, they just bang the phone and they leave. So that's how it is. But in India, it doesn't work that way, right? You really stretch, you're flexible, you're adaptable. And things that's a number 1 USP. But the millennial crowd coming in, so is that going to go away? Are we going to lose a number 1 USP in a way, right? So, but if you look at it, that's kind of a half cup empty view. If you look at it like a half cup full view, look at the strengths, So the top 5 things that the millennials claim, they're very, very intelligent. They started using iPad instead of, a slate board, in the kindergarten. They know computers in and out. They understand how things work out. And if you look at it, so technology and intelligence, they were liberal too. But the two important things that we really need to capitalize as leading organization is intelligence, as well as, the technology use. So that's how I know we would look at it. So if you look at it today, a typical testing scenario, right? So, requirements come in, you create test cases, you go ahead, develop code, And, quite often, I'm sure in everyone in this room at one point of time would have been, you would have been at the other side of the comment where they said, an eighth grader can do what you want to do. So it's kind of pumped us all up. So we want to, really bang the application, roll out a lot more defects, and really show that we are present there. That's a kind of an underlying mentality that we all carry. So it comes into development testing fights. Development is usually, it takes longer than expected, very little time to test, and it has to go live very soon, and the tester comes up with about 700 defects in the scenario, okay? So you see project manager there, the image shows that he's jogging, but it's actually, it's supposed to look like he's sweating out. So his view is basically, I have a great QA team. What else can he say, all right? End of the day, for a business user, it's really confusing. He really doesn't care whether you develop great or you find so many defects. There are a few things that are really on their mind, and a few things that they really want to do. So all of this is internal. So what is it that they really want to do? So if you look at it, business users, for them, the key priorities, okay? They want to roll out products before their competitors. That is their number one priority. And if you look at the number of products that are being rolled out these days, it's extremely quick. You slow, you blow kind of a scenario is what we have, okay? So, they want to make sure, it's as cost effective as possible, it's on time and budget, earlier than the time plan is even better for them. And then it is very important for them that the developers and testers don't fight with each other, they collaborate better. There is something that you can prevent. If you could prevent 500 or 700 defects before it would come to testing, that's something that they would prefer if it helps them get to the market very easily, right? So, and at the same time, when they look at, how do you increase productivity? See, we're no longer in the 1970s or 80s where we go and tell them it's independent testing, we do testing, it needs a lot of time, and if you want quality, you need to sustain it, go about. They're kind of maturing, right? And if you look at it, their expectations are also skyrocketing. So they're used to, getting quality at $100, then they want the same quality in $40, and at a quicker rate. So, that's something that they really are looking for. So if you look at it, today, there may be a few service providers servicing a client, okay? Are they satisfied with them? We usually roll customer satisfaction reports, right? So customer satisfaction, say good, bad, ugly, we're okay, thought process, great and all that. But what is going to stop them from moving, vendor A to vendor B? It's not cost. It's definitely not cost. All the cost is a very important thing, right? So it's value for money, and the second thing is loyalty. So, it's not like, you're always going to deliver great, sometimes you're going to mess up, the customer still needs to be with you, because the customer really needs to see you, seeing him being successful and doing the things that you need to do to make him successful. So customer loyalty is what, everybody needs to seek to, and not, customer satisfaction. So it's very, very important as to what they do and what we are doing to get there, right? So, if you look at it like a circle of life, it's a very interesting concept here. Looking at the mainframe era, right? There were developers were doing testing, right? A lot of, queries, running jobs, scheduling jobs, and going about. So, and then from there, then came the standalone PCs. So they kind of looked at folks who didn't know a lot of technology, less skill, converted them as testers. They used to do some kind of testing. So how did it move on? So, and then it was, they saw some value in testing, and testing became a specialized career track, right? So, from an 8th grader can do your job kind to, they started to recognize what are we really doing. So, it became as a specialized stream. So, technology spread out a little more, and then came devices, interoperability and stuff like that. And then the need came for specialized testing branching further, right? Performance, so automation, you name it, message testing, all of it, it started to branch out, okay? So if you pause here for a second and, look at the spider chart there, and I'll talk about it if you can't see it. So it's basically when the developers started doing testing, the cost of testing was negligible because the developers did it right? Again, I'm talking about cost of testing, not of cost of quality. I'll come to the point later. So, and then if you look at time to market, it was quicker. You do develop, quick show, and run it out and go. And they were more internal facing applications than consumer facing at that time, right? So, and then you went on to the non-technical, less skilled testers. Quality slightly improved. Cost of testing also was a little more expensive. Time to market was a little longer. So when you went into a specialized track and you say, you view requirements separately, we view requirements separately, you got to be independent and all that, the Chinese wall mechanism, the time to market got a little more elongated, better quality, but the cost that the customer was incurring was also higher. So similarly, when into branching, time to market was a little higher, cost was higher, but quality was a lot better too, right? So now you kind of benchmark this. So what we have been in this field for 20 years plus, testing, right? So the customer is kind of used to it. So after recession, it was like IT learns to do more with less. So when it started to look better, still they wanted to do it with lesser, right? It gets optimized day in day. So they say, you've been doing this for long. What is the value are you really bringing in, right? Can you really, make it quicker, faster, better? So and today you talk about waterfall agile. It kind of works, doesn't work, but what do you do to take it to the next step? So that's when that whole scenario, plus you see the M factor, the million crowd, the factor. So if you come and see there's very little difference between the developer and tester today. Okay, all of them get hired, same colleges. They go, they're from computer science stream or whatever stream, so they have programming capabilities. To look at an incident about 11, 12 years back. I was hired, and I was the only Java trained guy in 2000s. And there were about 10 mainframe guys sitting next to me. So I was all proud, and I was thinking I'm going to get a Java project. And then the HR comes and he says, "You 9 guys, you go there, and you go there." So I go, and from a distance I see a big black screen. So I couldn't believe it, a guy who was trained in Java being sent to testing and then the rest there. But then, whether the guy really did it intentionally or he had or it was just accident. But putting someone with real technology skills in a testing stream, I started to build, testing tools and frameworks and things, and it really got to a next dimension. So if you have the millennial fact, 12, 15 years later, right? So the millennial crowd comes. They're not going to listen to you sitting in a corner just doing testing, not building anything. And if you look at it, it's a flexibility issue. I think we're not capitalizing on an opportunity there, right? So there's going to be very little difference between developers and testers. Testers are going to be multi-skill. They're going to be they're going to have programming skills too. And then there's one set that's going to have huge domain skills too. And they want to do better and better things. And they're not the ones like us. For example, testing today. We're supposed to get a build in the afternoon and start testing. We wait till 11 in the evening, it doesn't come. So they ask us to come early morning, 6 o'clock. Then we have to wait. During the releases, end of the day, we want the build to go on time. So testing kind of stretches out and does it. Your work-life balance gets messed up. But then from a millennial crowd perspective, they're going to be very, very clear on the objective. You're paying me for 8 hours. I'll deliver the value for you in 7 hours. I'm gone. If that works with you, it works, or it doesn't, it doesn't. So, and they're going to have such high skills that it's going to evolve into more automatable, more technology-driven testing. And then really, if you see the circle of life, the gap between the developer and tester is very, very little. So from a phase where they said an 8th grader can do, in the lightest sense, you could probably take your user or your developer out for a drink and say, well, I think I could do what you guys are doing today when I was in 8th grade. So that's the kind of a mentality shift that's really going to happen, okay? So, so going on, everybody is talking about shift left. For those of you, I'm sure all of you heard of it, but those of you who haven't, they talk about, you just catch defects here, you want to go earlier, refine the processes, make it much better, so that, a lot of defects don't come in. So how do you shift left? Don't wait till, where it comes. So shift left, if you look at it, I don't think it is only going to shift left. And we are seeing symptoms of it right now today. It is going to be a dual shift. It's going to shift left and it's going to shift right. Okay? So if you look at it, shifting left is going to be more QE. Quality engineering, combination of QA, QC, and shift left. And there is going to be one side which will shift right. Okay? So it's going to be development powered by QE, and then it's going to be business testing. So if you look at the how it's going to be is, the testers are not going to be seen as enemies by the developers. They're going to be seen as partners. Okay. So if you really look at it, how it is going to be, quite honestly, I'll admit it. I know that an application is going to bomb about it. I get access to it in the pilot versions, but I still wait for it to come in the QA version, so I log legitimate defects there, right? But then how it's going to be is, the QA and the development team always used to fight, but now it's going to be more, partnering. If I can take, an example of paired programming, right? Two developers, they sit, one writes the code, one reviews it, but it's going to get slightly, a tweaked where, a developer and a tester would sit together. Okay, kind of scenarios where they would look at it, how is it that it can be done, and then the tester would also have programming skills to be able to automate things to an extent that as soon as the build is ready, the application level testing, from a white box perspective, the testing can be all carried out, and the next day you ship it out for more end-to-end business process testing. So what you do today is, quite honestly, if every one of us can admit, testers are there, they look at application-wise and they kind of, test it, right? So, but if you look at the last mile testing, a lot of times the interfaces are not ready, we do stubs and harnesses, but it really doesn't replicate the actual scenario, right? So the end-to-end business testing is not something that we do, or we are able to do it very effectively today in a larger scale, okay? So, what we're doing is, when you shift left, and there are cases where today, if you look at automation, level of automation, I'll just give you an example, you have, your build ready, okay, you're using Eclipse framework, you will have Hudson as a web publishing tool and use Selenium to automate. So as soon as the build is ready, Hudson, goes ahead, picks up the build from development, picks up the jar files from the testing environment, runs it, looks at the code coverage. If the code coverage is not over a particular level, it kind of rejects the build. So that level of automation we are achieving today, but it's more applicable for smoke test cases, or even in places where they don't do it in an extreme, in a complete way, but that's something that really needs to be adapted, made better. Okay, so that's something that will really happen. So we are kind of moving away from GUI-based testing. So we really don't wait till the GUI is there for it to get automated. So that level of testing is something that is being achieved and will be achieved in a much larger way. And if you look at it, tester, multi-skill tester, right? So he's going to have programming skills too. So and it's going to become so much more aggressive that if you look at it, just look at the combination, like a Dhoni and a Wasim Akram in a team together kind of a thing. So one is a developer, he looks at how well he can develop, right? He has an inside-out view. And a tester is something, has an external view, and then he gets an internal combination of, programming skills also. He understands how things work. He'll be able to look at logic. When they both look together, that's 360 degree. So the 360 degree view is what, you're going to get to. So, and in addition, you're going to have a lot of defect prevention focus. Out of 700 defects, if I could prevent about 400 to 500 defects earlier, just look at the value. Just look at the time that we would save, right? So if you look at it, it's going to be early automation, early defect detection, accelerated agility on the left side. So going on to the right side, it's more interesting. And trust me, it's not fiction, it's happening today actually. But it needs to happen in a much larger, much accepted way. So end-to-end business component testing. So if you're sitting with the business users, so if you look at it, 60% of the business users' time, where does it go? It goes in creating artifacts, waiting for interfaces to work, waiting for test data to be set up, right? And then he goes ahead and does it. So a lot of that can be taken up, right? So, when we start, we help them, create end-to-end business test cases. We automate a lot of things so that, their time could be in the key things alone, so right from setup, data, configuration, all of it could be automated, and test cases also, from it can be really automated, if not, completely, at least to a very large extent, okay? And when you actually do it, how you also do automation is today is keyword and hybrid driven, right? Let's take a meter to cache kind of a scenario, right? So, if the user wants to add a meter or, update a meter reading and get the meter reading out, do kind of invoicing, and then, there are different payment mechanisms, direct debit, credit card, you say, let it be. So, what happens is when you automate the underlying layer, and then you tag it to each of these functionalities. Tomorrow a business user will come, he'll just using a GUI-based setup, he'll just pick up each of these business areas in there, and underlying you have a complete automation test script with the flow, right? With the flow, with the data. That's customer delight. So that's what is happening and will happen in a much larger way. And you go about and you do automation, it becomes much faster. And if you look at it, the kind of applications that are coming out today too, every week you have a build kind, or every week you have a new product kind. So even if 1 or 2 defects, go out. By the time the next version comes out, it gets fixed and it goes about, right? So again, you'll have to really separate our mission critical application with, user experience kind of applications. Different kinds of applications are going to be there. So from their perspective also, how it will be is today, testing is IT owned, okay? But when you see this business testing piece, tomorrow it will be business owned. Business will own the testing, piece of it. So when they own it and they run with you, and you, breathe, eat, and drink with them, you also understand how the business operates end to end. They will be okay in prioritizing how you're going to. So risk-based testing is today scientific models are built into model-based testing tools, right? So you have your use cases, you have your requirements, and it generates test cases, and any particular requirement changes. What are the impacted paths? What are the most risky paths? So those are things that are existing today. That will become more powerful, okay? And business will be able to prioritize, let me get the end-to-end business. So it will no longer be application-specific testing in that way. They will look at end-to-end business flow testing. You look at all the scenarios that will work. If there is like a field, with kind of, which doesn't, populate data the way it is not mandatory, that is not so critical to the business as it is to the end-to-end business flow. But still, that's a step one, but then it'll be, expectations would go, further deep too, okay? So that end-to-end business testing will be there. And today, if you look at it, you're testing requirements, but is that where you want to stop? You should be able to test ideas. Ideas that really don't kick off. It's a waste of money. So you should be able to test ideas. So testing ideas would also be a focus with the kind of exposure you get in business testing, being a partner with the business users. You'd be more private to that. And then what is also happening and will happen in a bigger way is they say, guys, you've been doing the end-to-end business testing for us, or you've been helping with it, and you have the scale. And you understand business testing, you understand the business scenarios really well. And my customer service representatives are going to use a new application, they don't know it. So I think you're the best guys to train them. Can you do it for me? And then, when what is also happening and will happen in a bigger ways, they'll also say, can you do L0 support for me? You guys know the business so well now. You know the application, so when the application hits prod, can you also help with L0? Not that they're not going to have an L0 team at all, but this team is going to support them and help them because they know it end to end. So that is the kind of multi-skilled nature the testers would become. So, yesterday Arun from Wipro was talking about the testing growth, right? So it's going to be a $19.5 billion dedicated testing services spend, by 2015. So how you see today is it's more services. So, but as it progresses, it'll be more about creating meta automation tools, right? Automation tools that generate automation tools. And that's how it's going to be. So it's going to be a combination of product and services and product dominating. So that's going to be a paradigm shift too, that's currently happening. So, some of the stats, Gartner's, future predictions, they say, automation and tools will eliminate about 25% of labor hours. That kind of helps with the M factor. They have a better work-life balance, right? So, some of the other things are, cloud and TaaS adoption, after, Amazon EC2 fiasco, a lot of people are questioning cloud and things, but I don't think it will kind of, die down. So it is something that will really pick, and testing is one of these areas where cloud and TaaS will really be beneficial because it's less riskier than the rest of the areas, right? And then if you look at it, from a crowd testing perspective also, this in crowd testing is the future and things, but inside story or what we feel with our customers at least is they're very hesitant about putting their application out where a huge crowd tests it and they don't know who's actually testing it. So what if somebody finds a defect and doesn't report it and later hacks it using that particular feature? That's a constant fear that they have. So the kind of applications that they can put out for crowd testing is also very, very limited. But rather what they want, and another challenge is, before I go into the other criteria here, is you're opening it up to 30,000 folks, for crowd testing. Let's assume each of them, and it's a paper defect model, right? So let's assume 30,000 users, they raise about 5 defects each, right? So just look at the number of defects that will come in. Will the customer really have the bandwidth to screen through the number of defects and find if it's valid or not and go about? And it's not like, they can't say that I didn't have the time to screen to, because that's the model. I raise a valid defect, you say it's a valid defect, otherwise you reject it, but you got to pay me for the valid defects. So they really don't have the bandwidth to look at so many defects when especially the hit ratio is very little. So some, Tom, Dick and Harry test it and, raises a defect and it's nowhere closer to their business and, needs, even non-functional needs, then it really doesn't make sense. So what they're all saying is, I would rather prefer a value crowd testing. So basically, organizations which already have contracts with the customers and are trusted, so they open it up to the crowds within these organizations who could actually test it and really deliver value, who understand the domain, who understand, for example, if it's BFS, chapter 7, chapter 11, chapter 13, they really need to understand the differences, and in a domain-based crowd testing was something that really add value. Okay, so evolving models, right? So Agile looks at waterfall and says, I don't know your waterfall or waterfail, right? So, you're the thing in the past and I'm kind of new. So, and Agile is something like, set of guidelines. So, you follow some and you don't follow some to the best of your, to the best of your interest. You say Agile is about no documentation, I won't document it, but at the same time I won't follow the other principles of Agile. It's really not going to help. So it's like, comparing myself to Will Smith and say we look identical, I'm Will Smith too. So the thing is, so the next generation models are really, going to develop to support, how testing really needs to be more aggressive, very quick. So, very soon I'm sure the models are going to come and say Agile or Fragile, right? So that's something that a lot of models are coming, but the acceptance level also, if you look at it, today Agile, paired programming, test-driven developments are less than 10% of the projects that are being executed, at least from a testing angle. But that's something that, they don't have a choice. They will have to, go ahead, take that in a bigger way, accept it. There'll be newer models, more powerful models, which will make this happen. So going on to the thing, we're talking about future and things like that, is it really possible? If you look at it, 1916, Charlie Chaplin, he made this comment, right? He said, we want to see more of flesh and blood. I don't think cinema is really going to work. It's more of a fact, but it proved him wrong, right? Then Darryl Zanuck, 20th Century Fox, right? He said, I don't think people would want to stick onto plywood box, and I don't think television would really kick off, right? If you look at telephone, again, Western Union in 1878, they said this device is practically of no use to us. So, but the shift did happen and will happen, similarly. So, I don't know how many of you know about this story. When iPod was first, created, it's on the left. It was a little bulkier, okay, and that's how the design was. So, the technical team went to Steve Jobs very proudly. They presented it to him in his usual style. He weighed it, played with it, and he kind of, said, it's great, but I think it's too heavy. You need to really redesign. It's too big and too heavy. Then the technical team said, it's impossible. You can't reinvent invention here. So he just gave him a look. He walked down to the corner of his room. There was an aquarium. He dropped it in. And the iPod sank down. And air bubbles came off. And Steve said, you see the air bubbles, there's space there. Go and redesign this. Had he not said that, you wouldn't have those smaller versions of iPod today. So, it's all about invention, reinvention, and how you go about it. So, the best way to predict future is actually to go ahead and invent it. So, I think the journey is just starting. You should join the bandwagon, and we should redefine, testing. Thank you.